Hello Chasers, welcome to the very first episode of the Chipper Chase podcast. I'm Freddie, this is Will, and on today's very first episode we are joined by ex-USA Eagle,
current lead commentator for World Rugby, the US MLR and the HSBC 7 Series.
It's Dallen Stanford.
Okay, so we want to talk about your life in South Africa because you were born in Cape Town. So what was that like compared to the US?
Yeah, so South Africa is a remarkable country and has a very interesting past. It was a very difficult past, I suppose, for most South Africans growing up in apartheid. The segregation was a terrible system that South Africa adopted, and I grew up as a young teenager in that system, I suppose. But luckily, was part of the newer South African group that, you know, we had everybody of different races and nationalities at the same school, junior school, middle school, and high school. And so, you know, for us, luckily was a mixed South Africa, which is really great. So that was pretty fantastic. So playing rugby in South Africa was awesome because I was a little kid looking to tackle everything that moved. Yeah. And so, so that was super fun. And then, one thing I do want to credit with the South Africa on the rugby side of it was the coaching, the technique and coaching. I was a very small player, played in the back line, and in South Africa, you've got these big farmers, huge players that eat bricks for breakfast. So, but having the technique, tackling and stuff like that, I think that was really impressive. But yeah, growing up in South Africa, a beautiful country. I try to go back as often as I can. It's a huge journey, but it is pretty amazing. The one thing people don't realize is, you know, obviously how great the people are, how beautiful the country is. And yes, there are some times where it is unsafe. But in Cape Town, you don't see as much of that. Johannesburg is quite a little bit more dangerous, but Cape Town is still beautiful and amazing. That's why when the Sevens goes there, it's a real thrill to be there.
That's what I was about to say, because like the Cape Town Sevens, they go there every day. They've got a massive stadium, haven't they? So I bet it's nice to go back there.
Exactly. No, it honestly is like a full circle moment for me. Growing up in South Africa, at that time, there weren't many jobs in rugby. It was the late 90s. I finished high school in 1997. I actually went to England for a year. I spent a year in Devon at Kelly College and coached a bit of rugby. Had a great time traveling Europe, and it was so great. And my dad always said to me, you know, he knew how focused I was in rugby, but he said, listen, if you don't become a professional rugby player, you need to have something that you studied for, that you're interested in. So like you two studying, I was interested in media, marketing, journalism, that kind of field. And so that was always a passion of mine. And so luckily I could parlay that later in my career, coming to the US, working a bit of media and stuff like that. But yeah, you talk about the main difference. Well, firstly, living wise, it was really amazing to come to the USA where, you know, the country is very efficient. Things run pretty well. South Africa, you know, you could go to the bank and you could be waiting there for 2 hours to get something, or, you know what I mean? Like it just, things didn't, every now and again they shut down. So it was really nice to be in a country that worked pretty well. Rugby wise, it was amazing. When I said I played rugby here, I came to California, people were like, what's that? So completely different setup where South Africa rugby is a religion. You know, if you don't play, people say, what's wrong with you? Whereas coming to the US, people are like, what is that? Is that like football without pads?
Yeah. Like, what's the coaching like between the South Africa and America? Is it, I would guess, like, there's a bit different playing styles, isn't it, between South Africa and America?
Yeah, great question. You know, so I would say the nice thing about American rugby is there's quite an influx of foreign-born people that have been involved with the sport and that are very passionate about it. So they still have a decent rugby IQ that comes from those folks into the country, which is fantastic. And then you've got a lot of young American coaches that are so eager to gain their knowledge and become better coaches. And actually, there's an exchange with Premiership Rugby in the UK to get some of the US coaches, you know, a bit more experience. But I would say, on the whole, the coaching is very good because you also have to remember you're coaching completely different setup. You're coaching somebody that's maybe 20 years of age, arrives at rugby practice and says, "I've never touched the rugby ball. I want to play." So that's I coached a bit of college at Occidental College in LA, and I had a bunch of players who played for a few years and it was great. And so you can get on with things. And then I had a bunch of football players that said, "Coach, I'm brand new. I've never touched a rugby ball in my life. I was a defensive player in football, so I've never even handled the ball." So now you've got one coach, you're trying to have to bring up one level and help the others also without, making sure that they enjoy it as well. So it's a completely different challenge. But I think on the whole, you know, especially youth rugby is growing tremendously here.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like in the MLR, there's a lot of American footballers going to the rugby, so that's expanding the game in America even more, isn't it? So
yes, you're so right. The crossover athlete, because there's so many other great American sports that lend itself the attributes to rugby as well. So there's a lot of wrestlers that come across that actually make very good rugby players. There's obviously we have some great sprinters, especially in the sevens game that have come across, Naya Tapper and Colin Isles, Perry Baker. You know, those names are global names, and they didn't know rugby in their younger ages, really, and they picked it up later. So that I think that's the most exciting thing that people look at US rugby. The 15-a-side game is still very technical, so it'll still take a while. Major League Rugby is helping it there, and I think if the US gets to host that World Cup in 2031 and 2033, one for the men, one for the women, that would be a great showcase, and I think the US team will be primed to do well. Obviously, you look at the success of Japan, what they had when they hosted their World Cup, and they were amazing, and they're in a similar position to what the US is now. Japan, I think, started their top league in 1992 or 94, somewhere around there, mid 90s. So they were going for about a decade or so before they really started to get some big wins. And then, of course, when they hosted the World Cup, they had a good 15 years or more in the professional league.
100%.
I was just thinking, like, in terms of coaching and style of play in South Africa, I spent a bit of time there and I played for a little bit. Vaguely remember it because I was really young, but you can tell they focus a lot more on physicality more than like actually playing the game, because like every session was a contact session. Yeah, to like if your tackling wasn't good, you're off the team. You're on the bench.
You're off the team, exactly. Where did you go? Where were you?
I can't remember what exactly the place was called, but I lived in Johannesburg for a long time.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I was going to say that's the thing about you get exposed in South Africa if you can't tackle. So so that's the thing. So luckily for me, as a small player, obviously if I couldn't tackle, I'd be dropped straight away. But that was one thing I really enjoyed, was flying at people. And back then the laws were slightly different. You could lift somebody off the ground and you could fly at somebody and kind of if they didn't see it type thing. So that was kind of interesting. But I suppose the thing about my journey in South Africa was I knew that sevens, for example, would be something that I would be able to excel at because I was smaller and more elusive. With 15s, you can make a break or two, but then eventually somebody's going to crush you, right? And so sevens, I think, was really cool. So I went to the University of Cape Town, UCT, and played there. And every year they had one seven-a-side tournament. And that was probably my favorite thing ever, because there we could carve it up. You could throw no-look passes. You could be a bit more fancy and more flashy, and so that was very exciting. And that, I suppose, segued really well to when I came to the US and did more sevens.
How did you get into rugby? Like, when did you realise that I want to be a rugby player?
So growing up in South Africa, I think I got my first rugby ball when I was like 3 or 4 years old, like as young as that, from my grandfather. He was a very good rugby player, injured himself. He was a centre and he injured his knee. So, but back then when he played, he didn't get proper surgery, But so I played a lot of centre and I loved it from the young ages, like under 9 all the way through. I was fortunate enough to be in the A's, and then after university, I played at UCT, and we had some very big games. Our rival was Stellenbosch, so that's probably the biggest rugby club in the world, and they produced the most Springboks. Is Stellenbosch University. Even today in Major League Rugby, when I commentate, a lot of the South Africans, particularly the forwards, 90% of them come from Stellenbosch. I mean, they're massive, they're hard to stop, and it's crazy. So in our year, we used to get beaten by Stellenbosch by 30 or 40 points. But in our year, we had a very good year, and we actually tied them at the big intervarsity game. Yeah. And you should have seen, they were so upset because they used to beat these English speakers, So that was really great. So I suppose we had some good years going through there. And I knew that, hey, this game is obviously something I love and so passionate about. But how do I carry on playing the game, and how do I work in the sport? I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah. So coming to the US, they had 15s, but I was in a Division 2 side and it wasn't well known. But then we started playing a lot of sevens and we did really well. And that's kind of where I got seen by the USA coach and got asked. I'd been here for 3 years at the time. Do you want to play for the USA on the Sevens World Series? And I was shocked because I was like, firstly, that's a huge honor, thank you. But I'm not. Surely I can't. I have a South African accent. And the coach at the time, Al Crivelli, explained to me that if you haven't played for your country of birth and you've made a new home for yourself in a new country, you've been there for 3 or more years, living there, you can establish residency and play for your new country. So that blew my mind. So that was amazing. So from that point onwards, I was like, okay, I can continue to pursue the playing dream, which is amazing. So I got a chance to play in the Sevens series for 3 years. It was surreal because there I am as a South African, but playing with American jersey with a couple of South African teammates who also won the side. So it was funny playing against the Blitzboks.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, how you were on about like playing for like America. That's like kind of like the positive side, but obviously like the negative side with like Tonga and Samoa. Like they're being like left out because most of their players just like going to play for like New Zealand, and I think there's like a documentary about it, and it's just interesting to see like the contrast of like, it's actually a good thing, but then like because of you got Tonga getting like beat like 108-0 against New Zealand when it's just not really like good. So
yeah, Freddie, you bring up a good point, and I think World Rugby did try to address that in recent times by saying that after a certain number of years, you can be eligible to play for your country of birth or another country you're affiliated with if you've been there for. I need to look at the rules. I haven't looked at it recently, but that actually makes sense. Somebody who could have played for the All Blacks, but like 5 years ago, can now play for Tonga and go home and play for their country, which I think is really great.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a step because, as Bristol fans, aren't we? Like we're hearing like Piatau and like Siali and Charles all going back to like Tonga and Siali Piatau with this little Tongan scrum.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like the Vinapola brothers. That neither of them are English.
No.
Yeah, it is an interesting concept. I mean, if you look at around the world, if you go to the last Rugby World Cup 2019 and you look at where the country's players are from, you'll see quite a higher percentage, the most that has been ever in the World Cup, that are players born outside of that home country. So you saw like a bunch of Kiwis, a bunch of South African names in other countries playing, obviously all over. People move and they want to play international rugby. And sometimes, look, South Africa is a very tricky one. I mentioned early on that, obviously politically it went through, apartheid and Nelson Mandela came to power and everything like that. But the remnants are still there. So South Africa, unfortunately, are still forced to select a large majority of their players on the color of their skin, which is a very archaic way to do things. By now, their best players should play for the country. So that is a very complicated thing. So you find a lot of South African players coming through that will go to another country, live there, and eventually represent that country, which is exciting for them too. But I do understand it's a complicated situation.
Yeah, I mean it's good. Like you're playing some quality like international rugby, but then obviously you're not actually playing for like your actual like home nation, but like also like on pitch or like social media, like the actual like Tongan 15, if they actually had like eligible players and like they could actually win it. They could actually win the World Cup if they had like I think it was like Fekito and Piatau in the centre. They got some great players in there. Yeah.
It's so exciting, and that's the thing. Even with sevens too, like at least Fiji in the sevens, they're like such an exciting team and one of the best in the world. And Samoa were there back in the day, where they had a bunch of legendary players play. So, but you want the Pacific Island nations to be strong because they play such an exciting brand of rugby. That's why it's quite cool to see there's a Fijian team and a Samoan team in the Aussie Super Rugby competition that side, so and New Zealand as well. So that's really cool to see because you're right. A lot of players have gone to New Zealand because let's be fair, the All Blacks, best rugby team in the world. Yeah. So if you're living on an island and you're like, I want to play rugby as my profession, there's no professional rugby there. So it makes sense that they do go across and play at their closest country, which can give them a full contract and support their families.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good conversation to have because it is very interesting.
It does make me wonder if you're able to play for a worse team, you should play for that. If you're from Tonga but you want to play for New Zealand, then that's obviously going to be way more difficult. So you're giving yourself the challenge. But then if you're from New Zealand and want to play for Tonga, it almost makes it easier for yourself.
Yeah, it does, but that's the point is that sometimes you sometimes, let's say you play behind a very good player. Let's say there's a brilliant fly off in your way and you can't crack the team and you're too down on the depth chart, or like we said in South Africa, there's a situation where right from the beginning they're like, listen, you're never going to play because we got to get these players coming through that have been selected ahead of you. You have no other choice. So I mean, it is a complicated one, but I think at the same time you want to let players play, right? You want to play like look at in England like Brad Barrett. So he played centre for England. So really good South African guy. I know a lot of his friends. And so like he wouldn't have been a professional rugby player at the highest level. He would have played for Saracens, sure. The fact that he got to play and got that opportunity, I think is pretty special and amazing. Yeah. And yes, deep down, you're right. If you're a hardcore English fan or a hardcore South African fan, you're like, well, hold on. He's not from my country, or he is from my country playing for another country against us. We don't like that. I think we're now in the modern era where professional rugby unfortunately has that. And coaches, I think that's even harder. Imagine being a coach growing up in England, whatever. Now all of a sudden you're coaching New Zealand or Australia or something like that. So that must be a challenge for the coaches too, because it's like you're not coaching your country of birth and you're looking to beat your country of birth. And sometimes you do, so those things are complicated and tricky. And Ben Ryan with Fiji, did that, and the next English coach as well for Fiji. So those are just interesting ones. I suppose we're on the era where people want to be the best they can, and if their country doesn't provide the opportunities, then they might need to go overseas.
Yeah, that's good though. Like when you're about the players, like as England fans, like when we had like Tuolangi and we played New Zealand, I think it was like 2012, and then we actually like smashed New Zealand, and Tuolangi scored like a hat trick. those are actually like the good bits. But yeah, no, it's very interesting. Like your centers, or you played center, didn't you? Or...
Yeah. I played center in the 15-a-side game, and then fly off as well sometimes. And then in sevens, I played fly off. But when I was selected for the USA, they put me at scrum half. So that was kind of a challenge because scrum half in sevens has to throw the ball into the line out. Yeah. So I had never done that before. So that was a really weird thing. I'm like, holy smokes, how do I do it? So I had to practice a lot of getting that in, and then feeding the ball at scrum time. Look, it's much easier in sevens because there's only 3 people, but still, you have to be low. You have to be able to flick it back to your fly half. So the first time I did it, I was a complete shambles. I mean, every liner was skew. The scrum was not going well. But once you learn how to do that kind of role, it's kind of great. So yeah, it was pretty surreal playing around the world for the US. It was kind of interesting at the time, though. When we played sevens for the USA, we weren't a core side, meaning we didn't go to every tournament on the series. So we were invited to 3 tournaments the first year. We did really well. Then we invited to 6 tournaments the next year, and then became the core side in my final year playing for the US. So, and now, of course, now they're ranked in the top 3 in the world, which is amazing. So it's a long way we've come from the early days when the sevens was not very professional. And Al Caravelli, I credit him in the US for raising the game and making it professional for the sevens players. And now to this day, we just received news today that the Premier Sevens, which is a domestic US sevens competition, will have 3 competitive tournaments. And they're paying women and men to play sevens in the US, which is really cool. So 3 different tournaments. So you can be a domestic sevens player, at least get paid for a few months of the year doing sevens outside of your USA sevens contracts, which is great.
Yeah, like how proud of you, like seeing how far USA sevens have gone from like when you playing to like see they're actually like competing for like gold medals and all.
It's amazing. It's truly like special. And a lot of times, when South Africa played the USA, and I'm working in the commentary booth, or people ask me like, who are you betting on? And I'm like, well, number one, I honestly, I'm just going for good rugby. Whoever plays the best rugby wins. That's fantastic. At the same time, I will say that I was always, supporting the USA because USA being the underdogs coming through. But now it's really exciting, of course, because yes, South Africa are pretty dominant in this last year and a half. But outside of that, you never know if the USA can beat them. So it's really exciting to see. And I think it's so good for the sport as well. The men and women USA Eagles, the fact that they're the top 3 in the world consistently, it matters here because people don't know rugby as much. So when people hear about it or they see it on the news or see it on TV, especially at the Olympic Games, people then start to pay attention. So I think at the next Olympic Games, we said this about the last 2, the US need to medal. Whether it's the woman being on the podium or the men, that will raise the game tremendously. And people are watching all sorts of random sports that are in the Olympics, right? In America, and they're like cheering them on and going wild because the stories are great and the sport's interesting. Rugby is that. We know the game's amazing. It just hasn't been exposed in America to a large part of the population.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, because you're on about like it's going to be professional. They're going to get paid. They obviously have the opportunity to actually go to the Olympics. So that's going to be like huge, isn't it?
Yeah, going to the Olympics, is absolutely massive. I just missed out on that, so I finished it like 2009, 10 season, and they obviously played a few years later. But I mean, what a remarkable thing to go to the Olympic Games of rugby, and that's another good point though too about 15-a-side players that are later in their careers thinking, hold on, if I can switch across to sevens for a season and make the team. We saw Brian Abana and a few other players try to do that. Well, exactly. It's pretty remarkable to get to go to the Olympics. I mean, what an honor.
Are you going to at least watch it at the Olympics, like the next one, or are you going to be like commentating or whatever?
Yeah, so the commentating one, the Olympics is the only big event in rugby terms that I haven't done yet, but that one's a harder one because it depends on the network. So in the US, they show it on a certain network, and they sometimes use their American commentators that do other sports, so they don't know rugby, and so that's a bit of a challenge. World Rugby though, they sent me to the 15s World Cup in Japan in 2019, so that was remarkable. Got a chance to work with Joel Stransky, who as a young kid in South Africa, I watched him play and win the World Cup for the Springboks, so that was really cool. And then the sevens World Series is super exciting doing that, So, but yeah, next Olympics we'll see how things pan out. I normally go to events if I'm working at them, right? Because then you can put it on the calendar, which is really great. So, but 2028 in LA, I'll be living there. That will be really cool to go to that and be very close to home,
Well, speaking of like your commentary, we've all seen like the famous quotes that you say. How do you like just think of them on the spot, or do you write them?
Yeah, so I think firstly as a concept, some people like the traditional commentators that just just called the try and the name and stuff like that, and that's great, but I try to be as creative as possible here and there when the time is right, not try to overdo it or anything. But yeah, sometimes I think of ahead of time, particularly if you know what game you're doing, which players are playing, some moments may come through, and then other times it's just what you see on the field, and something happens that's either funny or it just comes to you on the spot. But yeah, I think for me personally, I love the sport of rugby. It's so much fun. Why not have fun in the commentary as well, right? Have a laugh every now and again and keep it entertaining.
Oh well, yeah. Because from like watching the game in England, the commentary is all right. It's pretty. It's not boring, but
it's what you need. They give you the names. They give you the try scorers and all that. But it's like we were watching. There's a few videos of you and doing your commentary, and we spent hours just watching. And
it's just so fun.
It's brilliant. So do you not write them or anything? You just come up on the spot?
No, I do. I do write a few. So like, let's say I'm on the plane or something, or I'm thinking, and let's say I know like these teams are matching up, or like you got Matt Giddo playing, and you got so and so. So I Adam Ashley Cooper, I know that I can use some sort of joke to make fun of their age because but there's brilliant players. So so like Adam Ashley Cooper, he's been playing since the days of the fax machine, and that's true. But obviously, it's funny. Nobody would really think of that. So yeah, some stuff you do prepare in your head ahead of time, just because and sevens is different, because sevens, every game there's going to be 4 to 6 tries, and at some point somebody's going to get burnt on the outside, somebody's going to be sidestepped, somebody's going to be run over. So you can in your head build up a couple of things. Because I also we only have limited vocabulary, and I wasn't an English major, so my vocabulary is quite small. So like I have to think of creative ways to say the same thing. And I think that's kind of where it comes about, where you can just say, try by whoever the name is and the team name. But, after a while, I think it's nice to inject something a little different.
Yeah, because like when there's like an insane try, like 100-meter sprint is just like, wow, he's ran around the outside and he's put the ball down between the posts. Like, it's just like nothing. So. So when you do it, it's very good. Well, we've actually we thought of a bit of a game.
Yeah.
We've written down some of your quotes.
Okay.
And we want you to finish them, basically.
Oh, oh, this is gonna test my memory. Oh,
yeah. All right. Okay. So I think the first one's quite easy.
This is one. They're all brilliant.
Honestly, like in lesson, you might like just watch a Dallen Stanford quote. Brilliant. All right. So the first one is, he's more dangerous than.
Okay. Well, this is a funny one because I've used a variety of these, but yes, my favorite one is from the Rugby World Cup. He's more dangerous than climate change.
Yeah,
who was writing that? That was an absolute classic.
Oh, it's brilliant. Something like he chipped it or something.
What that's right. Yeah. So exactly, like Ranach by himself went, full 60, 70 meters breaking. So that was a great moment.
Right.
This one's a classic. He's as strong as the smell of.
Oh, tuna sandwich.
Oh, that was brilliant.
Also, I mean, it's so random. I mean, so my wife laughs at me. She's like, these are not even funny. I'm like, no, it's funny to me. It's funny to me. That's fine. Someone else is going to enjoy it, so I'm glad you liked it.
All right. Next one is, he's as tough as Nicolas Cage's.
Oh, yes. Okay, so here's another one, which again, it's obscure, but I mean, I'm a huge Nicolas Cage. I laugh at his stuff, right? So he's as tough as Nicolas Cage's face.
Yes.
Because he's been through it all, and also even he was in that movie Face Off. Plus, he was going to play the Tiger King. I think he's pretty amazing.
He has got a tough face. You can't take
it. He does.
Oh, this one really confused us. When we first saw it, we were just lost.
Yeah.
He's more nervous than.
Oh yes, okay. He's more nervous than a long-tailed cat in a room filled with rocking chairs. Okay, so that's. So there we go. What's tricky too is that because I speak so quickly, sometimes you're right. I don't enunciate the words 100%, and so there was another one which was like what was it? Something about he's as tough as hard candy or something, the kind that lines dentist pockets. And so someone just they did the quote, but it was like said something else. I'm like, guys, that's not what I said. But I do need to slow down when I get so excited.
I think it's just so random. It's just like, what? That was just so funny. All right, next one is, he's built like a Russian.
Oh yes, built like a Russian vending machine.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
He's huge, isn't it?
What was the player's name? Number 8 for
Oh
LA.
yes, that's right. Langi Langi is his nickname. Hapia
great
Kui,
name.
I think. Yeah, great name, Langi Langi. But now some of these, I've over the years, you overhear something, and so it's like they're not like all the ones you read. But the Russian vending machine I had heard once before. I'm like, that is bloody amazing, and so it's kind of nice to bring it back. But I do rather have original stuff, and I also don't necessarily want to repeat the stuff again, unless I've done it in like a smaller kind of thing. And not many people have heard it. I'm like, okay, let me maybe if I liked it so much, maybe I'll bring it back, years later.
100%.
Yeah. The next one is nobody saw that coming.
Oh yes, not even Nostradamus.
That's brilliant. That it's just simple, isn't it?
Have you got them written up in front of you? Cheating.
No, I don't. But I remember those ones. Those are more recent. Like if you had to be a bit more obscure from a few years back, yeah, you're right. Sometimes I might not remember them.
We couldn't find any, but I just think all the ones that you do is just so fun.
My other one I like is long ago. Luke Hume scored for the USA with a lot of big side steps. He's got more steps than the Great Wall of China. That one I liked a lot because of.
That's brilliant.
Right. He's dangerous. He's.
Oh God, he's dangerous. That's a tough one because you're right. It could be. There's so many. Yeah, it could be very dangerous. So what did he? Well, you definitely found one. You've got me there. What is it? Well, because that's the thing. He's dangerous, or he's more elusive. Those I use them like for a lot. Like he's more elusive than a politician. Or there could be 10. There could be 10 elusive ones.
It's he's Hannibal Lecter dangerous.
Oh yes. Oh God, that's scary.
That was pretty dangerous. This one is definitely one of my personal favorites. Cecil Africa. He's got more.
Oh right. He's got more dummies than a local hospital, right? Oh, it's so good.
He says that all the time.
We've literally been quoting this ever since we saw the videos.
So funny.
Oh, that's Cecil Africa's so great.
Yeah.
Well, this was quite similar to the one before. Will.
This is hard.
He's good. He's.
Oh, I think I know where you got that from. It was an LA game or something. Let's think. He's. Well, there's laser surgery, but that's something different. There's extraterrestrial good.
Yeah.
Is that one?
Yeah.
But I will say I did use the alien one. He's more elusive than an alien as well, just to kind of that probably made more sense.
Yeah.
And he's more elusive than Homer Simpson's dietitian.
Now that one I personally enjoyed that because it's I've been obviously watching The Simpsons back in the day, so I thought it'd be good to bring something in with that, or even
Pete gets that one.
Yeah, I mean gets that one. Yeah, exactly.
It's just brilliant.
Do we make this one hard or not?
Just cut it there.
Okay, that's plastic.
Oh yes, that's the one. Plastic surgery precision.
Yeah.
Now you see in LA, of course, you've got every second person's a plastic surgeon, so that kind of it goes with the team, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. Well, that's all of them.
Yeah, you
awesome.
got wrong. You got one wrong.
You got one wrong.
Awesome. Well, and I'll work on a few each weekend. I try to bring in at least a couple. So we'll see what comes up next weekend.
We may have to give you some, but I can't think of any of them. Not as quick as you. Well, we've dabbled in the MLR. Let's chat a bit more about the MLR. What's your thoughts on it this year?
Yeah, so I'm very excited to see how things have been going off. It's been, Major League Rugby didn't have obviously a big year in 2020 because of COVID, but had a full season last year. So it was really good to see how teams have built on the last season, and particularly the new concept that 3 teams in the Eastern Conference and 3 teams in the Western Conference will make the playoffs. I think that makes it more exciting. 6 teams are in the hunt, and it's actually very tight. In the Eastern Conference, there's only a couple points, same as the Western Conference, separating the teams. And so I think come down to those last few weeks, it's going to be a thrilling finish. A lot of people have said, well, there's a lot of tries being scored, but the defense is not that strong.
Yeah.
And sure, that happens, I think, with the new league. I mean, to be fair, there's only been 3 champions crowned in the past. And so this technically is the 4th season, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, it's very young, very new into it. But I think for sure, the off the field a huge amount of progress off the field, especially getting more people and more communities engaged in the game in the different areas. So we've got 12 American sides and we've got one side out of Canada. So that's really cool. So US rugby is really benefiting. And so is Rugby Canada, which is cool because they haven't had, a high level competition unless it was playing against the USA or something. So that's been really good for the sport. I also think off the field, like we're talking about, it is really cool that a young player, American college player, can then have a dream of going to play professional rugby, getting paid in their own country. And normally the US players would have to go play in the UK if they were good enough, right? You couldn't just play a few seasons at home. The level was not good enough. And so I think that's really exciting. It's good for USA rugby in general, although the US Eagles have a tough task. They have to beat Chile home and away, or at least by aggregate, to qualify for the World Cup. So they still have to qualify, and Canada hasn't qualified. So if you look at international rugby, I think North America in 15s is struggling in the men's side of the game, not the women's. But sevens is obviously a bright light. And I think MLR is the great thing is it's broadcast now on television as well, as it has been for the last few years. So Fox Sports has a game of the week, and the rest of the games people can watch online at the Rugby Network as well. So, and internationally fans can watch. So we've had record numbers this year, which I think has been fantastic.
We only watch like the highlights on YouTube. I don't think there's any channels that do it. I don't think there is, but
no, not yet.
We only see the rugby from the highlights. So what we see is just like the highlights
all
of
the good
games.
bits.
All the good bits.
The good bits. Yes, exactly. Which is good. I think as the league grows, that's the thing about like Premiership rugby's been over 20 years. So and they've really got honed it down and got an amazing players playing in that league. And I think generally the first few years of Major Rugby, you saw a lot of older players that have finished with their country's, national duties and then played here for a season or two. Now we're seeing that is happening as well. But then younger players are coming through that are looking to get a bit more high-level experience, and then they'll go back home and represent their countries internationally or play, in Super Rugby or some of the big Premiership teams. So I think that's kind of cool. We've got kind of both angles joining the league, which is great.
100%. Like with the Premiership, I think the actual game itself, like how it's played over here, is compared to the American. If as a neutral, if I have no knowledge on rugby at all and I'm watching the MLR, I'm thinking MLR is so exciting, end-to-end stuff. Like the Premiership when you got the Exeter Chiefs and how they play is just just trudging along, very samey, aren't they?
In the MLR, it's more like off-road stuff. Off-road being away from the structure. You can see that. Whereas Premiership is structure. The only time it's not off structure is when there's a line break.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you're so right. And that's what happens when defenses get very organized and have had obviously years to get their systems in place and that sort of thing. So, I mean, if you look at international rugby as well, that's why I'm a huge proponent for sevens, because it's so exciting. Just as a viewer, if you're watching, it's really fun and it's a short attention span, where sometimes 15s, you can slog it out. Yes, we love watching international rugby, but it is not as exciting. Some of the games that tend to be a hard slog, a lot of kicking and stuff like that, where you're right. MLR, lots of running, lots of tries being scored. It's not uncommon to to have 80 points in a game, which is, as you said, fun to commentate, fun to watch.
Yeah, 100%. You can definitely see in the clips you can see from round one. I think you're on round 7 now. I think is that right? Yeah, round 7, and you can definitely see the actual improvement in the attendance as well. There's so many more fans attending the games. I don't think that's exactly what they need.
Yeah, you're so right about that, and that's a cool thing. Is some of the teams have got little smaller stadiums, like 3,000 to 5,000 people stadiums, which is fantastic. You've got LA though; they have the Coliseum that seats 80,000, so that's kind of crazy. But it looks beautiful on TV. It looks so great. But it is tough to get a big crowd there. But it does look good for the game. I think that's important as well. And Dallas joining is really cool. They've had some exciting games, and sure they haven't won a game yet, but they have a beautiful stadium. And again, first team in the league. You're going to learn a ton of lessons in the first season, and by year 2 or 3, you're really going to be challenging, which would be great.
100%. I think Chris Pennell and Henry Chinder over there now, who just came from England, so it's exciting.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, it is. It's good.
So,
it's good. Good to see the mix of players coming through from all different countries represented, which is really cool. And the other great English player, Ben Foden, he recently announced his retirement, but he played for several seasons with New York and really elevated the game. And now he's dancing with the stars or doing something great off the field.
How do you feel when you see those names come to your league, Cecil Afra came, Rob Shaw's came, some big names are starting to come now.
It's brilliant, like Martin Onu playing with San Diego. It's really fun to see, and it's really, it's a thrill, right? You get to commentate these players that have won Rugby World Cups and played for their country over 100 times. So that's really fun and amazing and great stats. And I think it's great for the league, right? Because while the US average fan might not know who they are, their signing is more for the international audience and people legitimizing Magic Rugby, which is great. I think that's important. You obviously got stories too of these young 20-year-old kids that grew up in their local area. Now they're representing the San Diego natives, representing the San Diego Legion. That's equally as good story, because the young Americans watching, the fans are like, oh, that's cool. This is the player from the local high school, which is exciting. But then you've got Nonu that's helping elevate the level with these young players coming through. And so that, I think, is probably the biggest asset we have in the league, is these players imparting their knowledge to the next generation of players and helping US rugby elevate the game here, which is great.
That's brilliant. You're also like the New England ambassador. Just talk to us, like, what does that actually like entail? Like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so I used to live in Los Angeles. My wife and I were there for about 13 years. And then recently, when COVID just started, her family lives in Massachusetts. So we decided to move back and be closer to them and be a bit more in the countryside. And when I did that, I actually got a call from the Free Jacks saying, hey, Dallen, we know you've this side. We'd love for you to help with our media every now and again if you want to contribute towards that. So I'm a consultant with them, which is really great. And so, every week or when I'm in town, I go across and chat to their coach, do a little social media clip about, what they thought about the game. I interview some of the players to get some insights, background, so the audience can know a bit more about them. And then a couple of fun things here and there as well, just to kind of create a bit of a buzz. As I said, I'm passionate about the game. I love it. But I think, you need to be fun and funny and bring the characters out. And so every now and again, we try to do that, which is really cool. So yeah, when I'm in town, I do that. But also, in the commentary world, I don't support any team per se, because you can't. Even when I'm commentating international rugby, because I might be from South Africa and live in America or be an American citizen now, but if they're playing any country, you have to be neutral. And the same thing when Free Jacks are playing, I'll know more about the team, right? So that's interesting because you've got more stories to tell. But you've got to try to balance it out and keep it even, because you've got to remember, an audience member supporting the other side will get very irritated easily if you're biased. And I know the Australians used to do it a lot in rugby when I watched. They're so biased for their team. It was like, come on, this is a broadcast to the rest of the world who are watching and supporting maybe the other team. So
it's like the Welsh with Eddie Butler and Jonathan Davis. I don't know if you listen to them. It was Wales against Italy the other day, and that was like incredible.
That was one of the best games ever.
Oh, it was just honestly
magic.
And then watching it live, it was just like Eddie Butler just battling on about I know Digger, what a player he is. Navidi, what a player he is.
It was Nigel Owens on the sideline when he was.
Oh yeah, Nigel Owens was on there as well.
Yeah, he did everything that Italy did well. He blamed on Wales. There was all their mistakes. They've let Italy score.
Wales terrible defense, but Italy.
You see, and that's the thing. It's a subtle difference, but you need to be positive as a commentator. And Eddie's a great voice, unbelievable voice, But you need to be positive about every team. And again, you're going to talk more about the team that has possession and the team that scores, obviously. But you've got to bring both sides up. So, and that's the thing is like, yes, you're going to point out, teams or players making mistakes, but you don't harp on them or the officials either. You just have to move on and try to be as positive with the game as well, to showcase that this game is brilliant and there are players on both sides and both teams need the credit. They deserve the credit as well. It's important.
100%. Right. So earlier today, we put out a tweet saying, give us some questions that you want Dallen to answer, and we got a fair few. More than we expected.
It's only little, aren't we? I think we set that account.
I think
a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, three people that had like 5 questions each.
Wow,
so
here we go.
Sean Lindersmith, does he still have the gloves?
Okay, so Sean Lindersmith, aka Snacks, is a brilliant human. He's been involved in rugby from the beginning. Such a top man. I see him at a lot of different sevens events internationally and locally in the US. So he's referring to back in the day. So embarrassingly enough, when I played sevens for the USA, I was given these fingerless gloves. Okay, and they were a thing back in the day. Okay, and so it wasn't like I just was like, hey, these are really cool and I want to be like Michael Jackson. No, it was not the case at all. So there were a couple of famous Springboks and All Blacks and folks in the UK for the conditions, right? They were either wet, exactly, and a lot of well-known players wore these little gloves. So I wore them. And the reason was we were going in Asia playing the Hong Kong Sevens, and it was so humid and so slippery, and I was playing scrum off, and I had to get a lot of touches on the ball. So I wore the gloves there. I liked them, and they were kind of cool, but I didn't realize at the time they weren't, and I've been shredded ever since. but Snacks, I've given them away. I don't have the gloves anymore. But good on you for shredding me.
You should put up on your wall, on your wall, something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
You should auction it.
Yeah. You also asked, what's your favourite stop on the series?
That's a good question. It's a tricky one. I'll probably break it up. As a fan, my favorite event going to ever was the Hong Kong Sevens as a fan. The South Stand was epic and a once in a lifetime experience, remarkable. As a player, yeah, playing in Hong Kong obviously is so special because it's like the home of Sevens. But personally, I like playing in San Diego at the Petco Park Stadium. That's because my parents came in from South Africa to watch, and my wife's parents were there too. So it was the only time they've all been together in the same place watching international rugby, and so that was really special to be there to do that. And then I suppose commentating wise, Cape Town Sevens, going home to Cape Town where I'm from to commentate that beautiful stadium, brand new stadium down near the water. Very, very special and super fun, So like the fact that I, as a young kid growing up, wanted to be involved in rugby, and here someone's flying me out to my own country, paying me to be there to talk about rugby and call games. Surreal.
Because in England, there's not really that much. Well, there's Twickenham Sevens, London Sevens, but I've never really had
not nearly as big.
Had the opportunity. I mean, the biggest game I went to recently was Bristol Saracens, and that was held at the new Tottenham Stadium. But it was
a shame.
It was honestly it was a last minute. I think it was a break from Randrandra.
No, it was Joe Joyce.
Joe Joyce, the big lot.
Yeah, homegrown second row. Oh, and the winger was just too fast for a pass.
Me and my cousin were in the stand. We just like, there we are. And then he passed it and he scored, and it was like, honestly, I don't want to rant about it, but it was just heartbreak, and we lost. And it was just
jeez.
Yeah, the next one, this is quite an easy answer for me. Biltong or beef jerky?
Oh, yeah, biltong for sure. I mean, how rude of you, Snacks. I mean, come on. It's like growing up on biltong. And the interesting thing is there's a few Major League Rugby players that are producing their own biltong. One group out of Texas called Ranger Biltong USA, and another one out of Atlanta called Billy Biltong. So it's really cool to get a few little snacks from them here and there when I mention them on the air. So those are the perks.
Quick one, does he miss me?
Yes, absolutely. Snacks is a lovely human, always has a smile on his face, always there to crack a joke. And by the way, he's always practicing his drop kicking, which he's a prop forward, and you can see he's a prop forward. He's a solid unit, and he's remarkably good at drop kicks, which must just be the practice.
Yeah, no, it's my mate. I'm going to shout him out here. Billy Fogg. All right, he's got hell of a boot on him. Yeah, he's got. He'll love me saying that. But, he's got
Fogg for the win. I love it.
Yeah, he's going to come in next training session.
Props are evolving.
Yeah.
Props are evolving.
And his last question was, what event will you see him at next?
Okay, that's a good question. So at Major League Rugby, we're doing all our broadcasts remotely. The final will hopefully be on site. So maybe we'll see him at the final of Major League Rugby. That's in June. Otherwise, we'll see him in July for sure at the Premier Sevens. There's 3 tournaments coming up, which is really cool. I think they head to San Jose, Washington, D.C., and Austin, Texas. So Snacks, we'll see you there. My friend, can't wait.
Right, the next person, where's the wheelman? Excuse me if I pronounce this wrong. He says, how big is the pickup of Whelan for NA?
Yes, Vian Conradi, that's right. Yeah, so that was announced today. So breaking news there, the New England Free Jacks announced a late addition to their team. Vian Conradi is a South African player that actually played at Gloucester for a little bit in Premiership Rugby, but he was being injured quite a bit. And he had to go back for some family, a family tragedy as well. So he hasn't played much in the Premiership, but really big addition for Major Rugby. He played here last season. He was outstanding. I think he scored a breakaway rolling maul try from like 45 meters out. A huge frame. So he eats his biltong for breakfast, that's for sure.
You should use that quote.
Yeah. He also asked, as someone who seems to be with the teams all over, what is his sense of the morale of the league?
For the league, yes, I would say the league, very positive. Look, outside of like a Washington, D.C., I think that's a tricky one. They're a team that have just let go of their head coach midway through the season. So that's very challenging. They're 0-7, so that's very tough. That's the thing, as a fan coming to watch your team play, even if you're not winning, if you're playing exciting rugby for the most majority of the game, that's still okay. They've just struggled, DC have. So I think they're the one, the morale's a little bit low. Yeah. Hopefully a new interim coach can boost that and then get some wins will be great. But outside that, I think the league, everybody's very excited about it. The fact that all the games are going ahead, there's attendance is growing, and the league's getting better and recognized from overseas folks. I mean, you guys know about it. People know about the world, around the world.
I think everyone's dabbled in a little bit. Like like me and Will, we follow the Japanese league quite a lot. That's definitely growing, and there's like, because you were saying earlier about like poor defense or like brilliant attack. Like there was one game, can't remember what team it was, but I think like the final score was like 64-46.
Yes,
And
exactly.
for a neutral,
100
that is
pointer.
exactly what you want, isn't it? But
yeah,
it's nice to see great defence, but obviously you'd love a massive score like that.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
Japanese are good defenders, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they are good.
Yeah. That league is very exciting to watch, and that's why I was saying, their professional league. That's why their national teams it becomes so powerful and so good, and and hopefully the US. That's right. We're one step at a time. But once we get to the 10-year mark, I think we're going to really be seeing proper results for the international side.
I think so. Like when if you manage to get like the World Cup, I think that then it'll really hopefully sort.
One last question from Ryan Kirby. I'd love to ask him about his thoughts on the MLR standings and to get some inside info on how teams like DC and Dallas can catch back up.
Yeah, so that's a tricky one for sure. I don't think the teams can catch up. Dallas are 0-7 and DC are 0-7. But what I will say is I do expect those sides, and I call the game where Houston played Dallas as one of those games you mentioned, a back and forth affair. Houston had to score 3 tries in the last 8 minutes to beat Dallas, which would have been Dallas's first victory against their rivals or anyone, in fact. So they had the potential. I think Dallas have the greater potential to beat a side out the blue. DC will still need to work on that for sure. But outside of those teams, if to answer his question about the standings, it's very close. So, for example, at the current time in the Eastern Conference, there is just 3 points separating the top 3 sides, which is pretty amazing. So New England, Rugby ATL, and Rugby New York are, so powerful. But I wouldn't write off the Toronto Arrows, and NOLA Gold even have an outside chance of coming through. The tricky part, I'll say, for some of these teams is if they've played a lot of home games already, so these are generally teams that have had better weather in the first part of the season, then they have to go on the road and finish. To play play 5 out of the last 8 games on the road is a lot harder because travel in the US is a nightmare. When you're going from one coast to the other, that's 6 hours of air travel, let alone the bus trip and getting to the hotel, and then 3-hour time zone change. So your body clock's all messed up, and it's just for one day, and then you have to play and adapt to that, and then fly all the way back.
Not fun playing.
No, it's not fun at all. And then if you've got multiple games on the road, I think it's hard. So I think where the teams that will do really well, obviously the teams in a strong position, but if they've got most of their home games coming up, which is what Toronto had a few years ago, they won 7 of 8 home games in a row to make the semifinals, which is so exciting and thrilling to watch. And then the Western Conference, just to quickly touch on that, you've got Austin Gilgronis, who are having a magic season, San Diego and the Seawolves and Houston Sabercats, and LA Guiltinis. 4 points separating the top 5 teams. So that's it's an absolute thriller that's going on there. I think LA will definitely come back and be strong again. They were missing about 9 brilliant backline players. And so they one by one will start to come back, which will really help them because they've got a very strong pack. Houston, I wouldn't write Houston out. I think they're in for a good finish. So that one's very tough to call. Which 3 are going to make it there? I would say LA, Austin, and then it could be San Diego, Houston, even Seattle. So it's very tough. Utah, they're a thrilling team. They must have had like 30 brilliant line breaks when I called them last in the second half alone, but they just couldn't finish. So they're a very exciting team, and when they get it together, they will be so fun to watch. It's just I think they've unfortunately shot themselves in the foot during the first half of the season.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like LA had a pretty poor start because they lost to I think they lost to Austin, and I think that's like a massive upset.
They lost to Austin. They lost to Houston. They lost to Houston to the very first game of the season, and Houston barely won any games the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
and like I think they're going to pick up the momentum now as well. So I think it's like we've saw the standings and the teams involved. Like Houston, they've got a pretty strong side. Like Willie Britt,
very strong side. Yeah, and so that's the thing. I think it's really exciting because it's so young in the league. A team can have a new director of rugby, new coaching staff, and bring in a bunch of new players, and all of a sudden be very competitive. Where I think in Premiership rugby, you need a lot of money for that, and even then you've got to keep with the salary cap. So that's very hard to do. But because it's a new league, the director of rugby, Heineke Meyer, who coached the Springboks, he was behind the Blue Bulls' success for many years. He's brought in a lot of younger South Africans, and you mentioned Billy Brits, and a bunch of seasoned veterans as well that are eager to play rugby, are eager to get to the US for this new experience, and they've upped the level of the league, which has been amazing. And they're a tough side to play. I mean, Danny Barrett, they've got a lot of sevens players too from the US Eagles playing for them as well.
Yeah, we watched a compilation of Danny Barrett earlier because, like, obviously we watched some sevens, like there's like live streams and all that. But yeah, I love the sevens, but like we saw a compilation of Danny Barrett, and he's just, what a player he is. He's just
he's amazing. What I like about Danny Barrett is he just gets down to business. He's not showy. He gets down to business, and the worst part is, like, I played sweeper in sevens, so the cover back, the fullback coming across. Danny Barry will make a break on the Sevens World Series, and then he'll look for the sweeper to run over the sweeper. Not even he could score in the corner, but he wants to go and run him over. It's like, oh my goodness, so scary.
There's like that's what we noticed. Like, he's got no need.
He's got the pace and the space to run round it, but just chooses not. He wants to. There's
literally just no need. He literally his body just turn and he's just gone.
Yeah, so good to watch.
Yeah, I think Willie Britson, him on the flank. I think that's pretty
terrifying.
Pretty strong back row.
That's terrifying.
Yeah,
we're doing this on every episode.
Okay.
We want to know your all-time 15 rugby union.
Oh my goodness, guys, that's a hard bloody question to throw up. All-time 15. No, okay. So listen, why don't I do this? Why don't I give you like my favorite backline players of all time?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll give you a few sevens players of all time because the seven series is so exciting as well.
And then we'll put them in. Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay. So, you know, growing up in South Africa, obviously watching a lot of South African, New Zealand games. You know, my players, I think, come from those two countries. They've been obviously outstanding players for every country. But I love scrum half, Joost van Westhuizen. He was one of my favorite players of all time. Joost was just a magic player, and he could make things happen. Such a big, tall scrum half as well. Aggressive player, such good skills. Yeah, it was brilliant. Fly half. Being a fly half myself, I really looked up to Carlos Spencer. The skills that Carlos Spencer brought in Super Rugby and for the All Blacks, like, he was just such a great player. And yes, I suppose in international rugby, sometimes that can be a liability when you're just throwing no-look passes and doing stuff. But the outrageous skill set that he possessed through the leg pass, the no-lookers, he was somebody that I would be shouting his name as a young kid playing touch rugby in South Africa. Spencer was certainly magic. Okay, so centers, really enjoyed hard-running 12 and 13. So my two centers, I'm going to go with Tana Umanga from the All Blacks. Just such a brilliant, chooses the best lines, is such an abrasive player, smashing people to the ground, putting in the hits as well. Don't mess with him. Exactly. Don't mess with Tana as well. Now, the outside center that I would choose is somebody that's probably not familiar with everybody around the world, but during the early 80s and early 90s in South Africa, they had this center called Dani Gaba. And he was, personally, watching him as a youngster growing up, he was probably, my opinion, one of the greatest rugby players of all time. He didn't get a chance to play much for the South African side because there was apartheid and sanctions in South Africa. So every now and again, South Africa on a tour. This guy was so remarkable. He scored 19 tries in 24 test matches. He was like a Barrett. He could knock people to the ground. He could throw a dummy like you've never seen. He could burn wings. He did it all. So Donny Gaba was probably my favorite player. So he'd be the outside center. Okay, now the back three. So, you know, being a young kid in South Africa in 95, watching Jonah Lomu carve up. And I know it was against England and other countries, but it was like, I was at that game when he ran over Mike Cat and he scored 3 tries at Newlands. It was remarkable. Actually, there's a newspaper photo of him and there's me tapping him on the back, me and a couple of other friends out of high school. Yeah, so very cool memory that.
To find that.
Yeah, we're going to some.
I'll flick it to you. John Lomu, iconic player, of course. And then South African legend on the wing, Brian Habana.
Yeah,
he just could make something out of nothing. That's the thing. Like the intercepts he took, the lines he ran, the finishing. Also, he's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So Brian Habana definitely secures that wing spot. Yeah, great, exactly. He on the Rugby High podcast that we had, Brian Habana was our first guest. He's just such a big hitter and such a legend. Okay, and then fullback. I love an exciting fullback that prefers to run and not kick. And so that for that reason, the All Black Christian Cullen is just such a brilliant runner. His gliding runs and his timing just make them look effortless. He would skin people like a fish. It really just so fun to watch, you know. So Cullen, I think. So Cullen be my fullback. So that's my back line. I mean, you know, there's obviously a lot of forwards. Again, growing up in South Africa, I won't give you the full run of the forwards, but of course, like a Victor Manfield was so good, a Bobby Skinstad, players like that. But there's a lot of players to choose from. Yeah, exactly. The beast for sure, you know. Yeah, Matariwa, that's right. Exactly. Okay, sevens. Let me give you. There we go.
That's taking me a while to pronounce that.
No, nicely done. So he played in Washington, D.C., and they actually had a really good 2020 season. I think they won 4 and lost 1. They were outstanding in that year, but then he left, you know. So sevens, so there are a lot of great sevens players over the years. I'll just quickly fire out some of my favorite of all time. Some of them I got a chance to play against and be rounded like a parked car. And others you don't. I've just obviously seen on the big screen. Okay, so my 3 forwards that I like a lot are Ben Pinkelman for the USA, Tim Mickelson for New Zealand, and Banner Cock for South Africa. Those 3 are fantastic. My bench for the forwards, Danny Barrett makes the team. Of course, he's just so good. On the bench, well, listen. This is the thing about sevens. You sometimes keep your better players to come on and to finish off the game. So because if you start Barrett, you can't take him off. Which coach is going to say Barrett come off? He's going to dead stare you. You can't get him off. So I'd rather just start him.
But then
in a cage.
To him, Barrett, you're on the bench. That can't be nice.
No, it can't. But that means when he gets in the field, he's going to kill anybody in front of his way. He's like a caged lion waiting to go. So that's my secret there. Now, back in the day, Carl Tanana, Kiwi legend, I would put him in the forwards as well. I commentated a lot with him, a great player, and he was a great leader and just a brilliant human as well. So he's on the bench there. Okay, then my backs. Wasali Serevi at scrum half. Got to be the king of sevens, the Fijian legend. Got a chance to spend a lot of time with him because he lived in the US and has been for the last 10 or 15 years. So he's been really fun. Ben Gollings from England. What a laugh. Ben Gollings, truly like, as a young player growing up, watching him and playing against him as well, the timing he had, his kicking, his elusive ability, his fitness, his skills, his work rate, just absolutely outstanding. Then centers, I have Zar Lawrence from New Zealand. At the time in 2007 to 2009, he was brilliant. New Zealand won the series several times in that period, and he was outstanding for them. Perry Baker on the wing, of course. Who else but the speed stick? Okay. So good. So good.
How he came up with that on the spot was ridiculous.
You learned that from Dallen.
Speed stick, he's so thin, but he's worth 2 tries every game, which in sevens is such a tight margin. So he's winning most of the games for you just in his ability alone. Now, there's 3 other players I really love as well. They'll be on the bench there. William Ryder, Fijian legend. William Ryder was probably one of the best steppers in the sevens game. Even better than Serevi, just because he was so explosive and he came through as a young prodigy of Serevi. So he was absolutely outstanding. Only played for a few seasons. Brent Russell is a South African that was 7th player of the year one year. And he was my roommate in South Africa growing up. Played at UCT and played for the Springboks as well. Very small little player. They didn't know what to do with him in 15s because he was, much smaller. But in sevens, oh my goodness, this guy was electric. And then finally, Dan Norton from England, the try scoring machine, the legend. I mean, he's vintage, absolute vintage.
What player? How many tries has he scored now?
350 odd. Yeah, he was just flipping. I mean, and the fact that he can just still glide, chip over the top, and has all the time in the world to collect it. Just the Prince of Wings.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can't really. I can't
pick anything out wrong with that, to be honest.
I mean, that is just brilliant. I mean, what's your Kenyan?
The Buffalo.
The Buffalo.
The Buffalo. Alvin Otieno. Oh, he's so good. I mean, he's brilliant. Now, that's the thing. He is seriously such a thrill to watch. And Kenya is one of my favorite teams to watch. Them and obviously Fiji. And when Kenya get going and the Buffalo gets it, oh my goodness, it's just thrilling to watch. Oh,
what a man! And didn't they I swear they won the series, didn't they? They beat Fiji in the final and.
They won tournaments. You're right. Yeah, they won a tournament, which is remarkable. But outside of that, that's the thing where they have the best crowd support ever, and they're just so fun to watch. They haven't taken it to the next level. When Mike Friday was coaching them, they were top six side in the series, and that was amazing to see that. But it'd be good to see Kenya back to their best.
100%. It's always good to see like a nation that's not really spoken about, like in the sevens.
Yes.
Got I don't know, it was like Hong Kong against Brazil or something like that. And as a neutral, you're thinking, oh, okay, but click on the sevens. This is
absolutely. And that's what makes it so exciting is that a nation that might not be, heavily funded or one of the top 15 aside nations in the world can compete in sevens. And that's why I love sevens so much, where a new fan tuning in, as you say, can watch, 12 to 16 countries on a day, watch them play, and you'll have these shock results, which is what sevens is all about. Final play of the game, somebody scores to win.
As well as the top 15 of all time, we're going to do our favorite kit of all time, because we really love a good kit.
We love a good kit.
So what's your favorite kit?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Favorite kit of all time. I mean, so many countries have come up with some brilliant, new look strips, if you will. I like Fiji. I think Fiji every now and again, they've got some creative kit, pretty cool. The Pacific Island nation, I love that. France, when they have red and they're blue as well, pretty amazing. I mean, that's the thing, you can't really go wrong. There's so many different ones come through. Even like in Magic Rugby, the New England Free Jacks, just for the St. Patrick's Day weekend, supported a green kit, was so slick. Now they've got a new red version as well. What are some of your favorite kits?
Well, for me, I've actually got one in my bag, but it was the Argentinian one from the World Cup in 2009. I just think Argentinian
Awesome.
kids,
Yes.
the one with like the yellow and the
yes, love it as well.
It's just you just can't go wrong with the Argentinian kit.
One of my favourites has got to be the Nigerian one.
The new one.
It's Nigerian kit.
Oh, I need to see that. I don't know. I've seen it now.
it's
You've got to post
really
that.
nice.
Post that on your socials because I think get a lot of engagement to see which.
I think that's
which
League, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
Was it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Either way, it's really nice. It's similar to the football kit.
Yeah. Or
like just a weird zigzag pattern all the way down. Yeah. It's really nice.
That's great.
Yeah. So So if you had, it's difficult, but if you had to pick one, what would it be?
Oh, that's tough. I will say, speaking about the 2019 World Cup, Japan's jersey was hard to come by, and in one of the games I got a chance to commentate their games, and their jersey was sold out everywhere in the country. And I mentioned on air that I'm looking for a jersey if anybody has it, and they sent me one. Canterbury sent me a Japan jersey from the World Cup, so pretty epic. So that I would say is probably That's probably one of my
one. That's really nice.
Exactly, so nice. So personally, the ones that I own, I would say that one would be really up there, the Japanese one. But yeah, it's tough to kind of choose, I suppose. If there's something Fijian, let me come back to you with a photo. But yes, something flair from the islands, I think would be great.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Will and Freddie, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here on the Chip and Chase. You bloody legends! Awesome work.
Get out there! Come on. I know, maybe in the future we'll love to have you on again.
Brilliant.
And maybe when we get a bit bigger, maybe we might go on Dallen's. But
get on the highlight.
You got to send me some of the one-liners you're working on as well for the commentary.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, we're working on our own like merchandise and everything. We're trying something. So
fantastic champions. We'll go well that side. Great to be on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Cheers now. Bye guys.
Bye.